Greetings, viewers. This is CP666 signing on for what is quite possibly one of the most exciting videos I will be making for a very long time. But in order to tell you why this video is going to be exciting, we're going to need to go back in time. Right, so now that we are back in the year 2004, I can begin describing my story. So, in 2004, I don't remember what month it was, we upgraded the old Pentium 120 system that was, at the time, the family computer. We replaced it with a new one, a new Athlon 1300 Thunderbird system. But at the time, I didn't know what it was. And what I ended up getting, personally, the Pentium 120 system for use as, well, my own. And I put it to good use. I definitely used it for the majority of the things that I would consider computer usages. But later on in that year, the year 2004, I acquired 3 new laptops. These are the first ever laptops I'd ever got. Prior to the Pentium 120, I had an XT, but that was about it. I got 3 Dell Latitude XPIs. 2 of them were P133 ST systems. 1 of them was a P100 ST. None of them worked. It was my first real experience repairing laptops. And it was an exciting experience. It was definitely a learning experience because I destroyed one of the outer cases, unfortunately, but I learned from that and didn't destroy any of the others. I really only used one as a sort of experimental teardown kind of thing, which was pretty cool. It definitely worked. I'll tell you what, it's really hard to hold this camera in my small hands, but, you know. Anyway, now we need to jump forward once again in time. Alright, we are now in the year 2005, and we're at the beginning of 2005. So the date that you're seeing is actually fairly accurate. But this year I got 2 new laptops. Well, okay, they weren't new. They were new to me, but they weren't new at all. One of them was an old, well, both of them were old Toshiba Satellite Pro systems. One of them was a relatively new one. However, it had stereo speakers on the palm rest, or not the palm rest, but the upper keyboard bezel. Had a bigger screen, even though it was only passive matrix. Don't remember what the specs were. I don't even know what the machine was. To be perfectly honest, I never really looked at that because I never really cared. But I do know what the other one was. The other one was fairly similar to the one that you see on your screen right now. It had the same monophonic speaker, had the same overall look and feel to it, and but the one that I had was actually a Satellite Pro 430 CDT, and it was a fairly nice unit. But all good things must come to an end, and I'm going to advance once again in time, and we are going to discuss what ended up happening. Alright, I'll tell you what, I am getting a kick out of this whole time-traveling thing, but we're now in the year 2007. In fact, we advanced a couple of months to August 16th of 2007. And it is at this point that I have to discuss the end of the line for these machines, with me anyway. Unfortunately, we had a power surge here, and that took out quite a number of things. I think most of the TVs and all those kinds of things survived, but microwave did not. A couple of other things did not. Alarm clocks, lamps, all those kinds of things. Light bulbs didn't survive. And unfortunately, I don't think a single one of my computers really survived that. Actually, that's not true. One of them did. The Athlon 1300 Thunderbird system did survive from that. However, the power supply in it failed about 2 months later. So, I guess you could say I didn't survive. But, all of the laptops that I had, the 2 Dells, the 2 Toshibas, both had power supply failures. As a result, The XT died, the Pentium 120 died, the Pentium D, which I had gotten in 2006, ended up dying on me, so that was kind of unfortunate, but we were able to replace the power supply in that one frantically to get that one up and going. So that was pretty cool as well, but it wasn't really cool because I had to get rid of these laptops. I don't know if they still exist. I knew they were thrown away. Well, they weren't thrown away, sorry. I knew they were sold. But I don't know if they're still around to this day. It would be pretty cool if they were still around in the year 2014. And speaking of the year 2014, let's advance back to the present time in the year 2014. Ah, does it ever feel good to be back home? In the present time, no stupid things, but anyway, what you see now in front of you is something that I got probably about a week ago. This is probably the closest thing that I will ever come to one of my old machines. I might find another one, I probably will. I've still got parts for the Pentium 120, so you never know. But as of right now, this is the only one that I have from those old times, other than the Pentium D and the Athlon. But anyway, okay, I digress. This, as you can see, or could see before the focus went to pieces, is a Toshiba Satellite Pro 420 CDT. Now I know that I said mine was a 430. These are pretty much the same identical machines. The only difference between this and the 430 is the fact that the 430 had a Pentium 120 CPU. This only has a Pentium 100. This also only has 8 megabytes of soldered on memory on the motherboard, as opposed to the 16 megabytes that the 430 gave you. However, this one has a 32 megabyte EDO DRAM card installed, and my 430 only had, I think it only had like a 16 when I got it, but maybe it didn't, you never know. I certainly don't. But in any event, let's take a look at what this machine has to offer. You can see we've got headphone and the volume wheel on the front, and the monophonic speaker, just like the 430. If we turn it around here very carefully, this thing is in immaculate condition, I will tell you that much, and I'll discuss why in a second. But we have what it looks to be a line output. I don't know what that symbol means. I think that means line output though. And a microphone jack and the power switch. 2 Type 2, 1 Type 3 PCMCIA card slots like every single other laptop made around this time period. Port for the floppy. I had one of those, but I got rid of it, unfortunately, and I didn't get one with this one. But oh well, you can't have everything. 9-pin serial, and this door doesn't close. That was a common failure point on pretty much any laptop of the 90s, was these doors. These doors would constantly fail, and I do apologize for all of the noise that you can hear with the movement noise. This camera is hard to hold, like I mentioned, for my small hands. Even in the year 2014, guys, I've got small hands, so using something like this is really difficult. But anyway, I digress. We have a PS2 port for a keyboard or a mouse. Fan. Port for the power, and that was a selling point for these, was the internal power brick. I like that feature because my Satellite Pro, whatever the heck it was, with the passive matrix display that I had the external power brick. And do you know what happens with those? Well, I'll tell you, there was a design flaw with those machines, where that if you put too much stress or too much pressure on the connector, it would break the DC down converter board that's inside the machine. And you would be left with a machine that would no longer seem to work on AC power, unless you jiggled the connector the right way, which would tend to break it even more, but, you know. So what I actually ended up having to do was taking the battery out of that machine and putting it in my 430 and charging it up in the 430. Now that was fun. But it enabled me to still use that other machine, which I thought was pretty rewarding though. Port for the docking station, which is standard across most of these Toshibas. I don't have the docking station for this, but I didn't have the docking station for my other one anyway, so it doesn't matter. 25-pin parallel, HD 15, infrared, and on this side we have a CD-ROM drive. this could be a floppy drive if you wanted it to be a floppy drive. Or you could put the floppy drive in the external enclosure. But you could not put the CD-ROM drive in the external enclosure because it wouldn't work. Believe me, I've tried it. And that right there is actually the latch for the battery door, which I should show you. Let's take a look at the bottom of the machine. Heavy. Okay. So let's take off this battery door. In fact, to do this, I'm going to put the camera down very carefully, of course. These battery doors are always a pain in the butt because they're difficult to take off even when they were brand new. This was a common complaint on these. And they were difficult to take off even in 2005 when I would have had mine. Come on. There we go. Alright. So you can also see the port for the, what is this? Hard drive. It's got the original hard drive in it. It's a 1.2 gigabyte drive. I don't quite know what this does. I'm sure it's got some kind of a purpose. Maybe it's there to hold the battery or help you to take the battery out. And look at all those pins for that battery. My lord. That's a lot of pins. Underneath here is your EDO memory slot. And on this right here, huge ass latch, which is completely unnecessary, is for taking out the Ultra Bay device. Did I just call it an Ultra Bay? That's not what it's called. It requires two hands to put the drive back in too, because it's under a lot of pressure. But, you know, whatever. So let's try and latch this back up again. And lock it. I have it locked just for safety purposes, because I don't want that latch coming up or somebody to steal it, even though I don't know why anybody would steal it. So now I'm putting the battery door back on, which is a lot easier than taking it off. Let me tell you. And I'm going to plug the machine in while the camera is sitting down. I'll do it all in one fell swoop. With one of these, you just require a boombox power cord. There's no special external brick, which is, again, a very nice thing. Not necessarily because of the issues with the external bricks, but because of just convenience sake. You don't have some huge brick on a leash that you have to carry around everywhere with you. So, the machine is now, when I can get this in there, plugged in. Okay, I got a light. That's a good sign. So, you can see that the power light is now on. Well, maybe you can. Try to zoom it out enough so that the camera will focus on it. But I guess you can't really see it. There you go. Now you can see it. Here's the latch on the front. It's a push latch. And that's what the machine looks like. You can see it's quite yellowed. But mine was worse, so this is definitely in better condition than mine was. This actually pops up. You can pop this up and lift the keyboard up, and you can access the batteries and other various parts of the system. To pop this off, I believe you have to remove screws, though. So, this has an 11-inch, or what looks like an 11-inch, I believe it's 1024 by 768, but it's an active matrix display, which is fairly nice. It's a lot better than the stupid passive matrix ones, which look so dim you can't use them and have absolutely zero viewing angle on them. But here you pretty much have it. Typical Toshiba layout. Actually, is it? Yeah, it is. The arrow keys are all in a row. Unlike the Apples, which had the arrow keys in a line, which I thought was rather annoying. You have your home, page up, and page down keys here. That was one gripe with these, is because the backspace key is right next to the home key. So if you're used to modern systems like this, which have the backspace key right next to the side, you quite frequently will accidentally either hit both of these keys or hit the home key and lose where you were on your line and then have to find it, sometimes resulting in a big long string of swear words. But as a young kid, I wasn't like that. I just said, rats. Rats. Went to the beginning of the line. So, these actually are beauty plugs, which cover up screws. You can take those off, but I won't, because I don't want to lose them. Let's go ahead and power the machine up. Here's the power button, of course. And we can listen to it starting up. Not sure if you can hear that hard drive. The display isn't the brightest thing in the world anymore because, of course, it's old. To get into the Toshiba BIOS, you press Escape and F1. And, well, okay. So it'll ask you to press F1 again, and then you can get into the BIOS. We can see 4960 kilobytes of memory, 640K base memory. That's the standard conventional that every single machine has. We have a VGA compatible display adapter. There's your color mode. You can actually change it to monochrome mode if you really wanted to, although I don't know why you would want to do that. Maybe for some older programs, but still. The VGA segment address, the days before plug and play. Isn't that great? This display is capable of 16 million colors, and all of that. Text mode stretch is enabled. If I were to turn that off, it would just simply, the only thing that does is it changes the amount of space between the characters. It doesn't actually stretch the characters like it does on later machines. I like to have it on though. Hard drive is in EIDE mode, which basically allows for greater capacity. More examples of stuff before plug and play. You had to know what all these IRQs were. And there's your boot device lists. You can see one thing that's definitely missing, especially if you're used to newer machines like I am, especially now. I say especially a lot, but anyway. There is no CD-ROM option for the boot. And if we take a look here, stop that. I just have two options. That's right, this thing does not support booting from the CD-ROM drive. So you have to load it, either load the stuff on the hard drive from another machine, or you have to have the floppy drive. So unfortunately, I'm glad this thing actually still has an operating system on it, and there wasn't much personal data on it. Of course, all the personal data is now gone because I erased it. But let's go ahead and escape out of this. Hit yes. Oh yeah, the other thing I wanted to mention is that there's no way to set the date and time in that BIOS. So you have to do it within your operating system. Okay, so you can see that it's now booting, and it's running through a self-test. So let's count through all the memory. Suppose you can skip that, but I don't really care enough. Alright, starting Windows 95. This is not the original build of 95, I just pulled that off of another machine because I could. It does have all this stuff from Windows 3.1 on it, like mine did, because mine was originally running Windows 3.11, and I upgraded it to 95. We've got the 256 color background from Windows 95, or Windows 3.1. Listen to that amazing quality speaker. No overdriving, like a lot of other old laptops. In any event, let's go ahead and take a look at the system properties. I've got the system properties, all that stuff changed. There is still a copy of Office on here that I need to remove. But unfortunately, my CD-ROM drive doesn't work. So I'm going to have to probably pop the drive into another machine and try and remove it that way, or pop another drive in here. But I'll have to wait until I'm feeling adventurous enough to do it. See, it's registered to me, of course. I changed that myself, obviously. Pentium, 40 megabytes of memory. I think there are some unknown devices. There are a couple. There's a communications port that's unknown. Hardware profiles, performance, all of that whatnot. But that's pretty much it. There's not a whole heck of a lot on here. I did put WSFTP. I have had this thing online. I put my Xircom Ethernet 2PS card in here, and I was able to get it online. And I was able to transfer a few of the files off of for safekeeping, because you never know, maybe the original owner would like to have their data back. I didn't ask them, but I know who the original owner is. So, I think that's actually pretty much it. There's not a lot that I need to discuss about this machine, other than the sheer size. I mean, let's take this Dell by comparison here, if I can move the Dell. Very difficult in the line. that this Toshiba's base is almost as thick as that Dell with its LCD panel closed. That is impressive. And I think these newer Toshibas, which I don't, they're in the bags right now, so I don't want to take them out, but I think the newer Toshibas are about this size with the LCDs closed. This is not as thick as they come. In fact, I think maybe those NECs are slightly thicker, but I mean, you never know. Oh yeah, flying Windows screensaver. When's the last time you saw that? But there you pretty much have it. That's about all I can think of to say. The one other thing I want to point out, though, is the way that the number lock works. It was all the score lock. You have to press function in order to get number lock to work by default. In fact, I'm going to open up a text editor here. Notice the lack of any Windows key because this predates that. Let's run Notepad. Wonderful keyboard. It's no Model M, but it's certainly pretty good. So if I turn on function and press U, that should give me a 4. But if I just press U, that just gives me a U. If I press function F11, which I can't do with one hand, actually I can do it with one hand, that turns on number lock by default. I can press U, and I get a 4. But if I were to press function U now, I get a U. Function Shift U gives you the caps lock, or if you press the caps lock key. The caps lock key continues to work normally. Same thing applies with scroll lock. If you press function, it turns off scroll lock when you have scroll lock on. And if you press function F10, that turns off scroll lock, and if you press function like that, it turns it on. To get to the next function, you have to press function F11 twice. So, that's pretty much how that works, and that's it for this video. No, I don't want to save it. Always, as you can see, I've put the sounds in and arranged them just the way I wanted. Thank you for watching. If you have any comments, feel free to leave them down below. And this is CP666 signing off. I hope to see you next time. Till then.